Hello, everybody, and welcome to a sunny 1904 club once again on the back of City's fantastic last gasp win at Hillsborough on Saturday. I'm joined today by Kathryn and Burnsy. Kathryn, how are you?
I'm feeling much better after Saturday. What a difference a week can
Oh,
make to somebody's mood, honestly.
unbelievable, isn't it? Burnsy, you were with me at Hillsborough. Apologies if I blocked your view when Hughes scored, because I know I jumped up and went a bit crazy and the press box etiquette went out the window in that 94th minute. It was a magical moment, wasn't it?
It was absolutely in. I mean, it was a great header, made even more great by the context of the game because I think it was the only effort they had on target in the whole of the second half. But what a throwback of a header that was! That was properly headed, and I'm struggling to remember um, a, qual- a goal with that quality of header. People suggesting on Twitter, going back to Alan Shearer, somebody suggesting Chris Chilton in City colours headed a ball like that. Just stunning header, and so important in the context of the season, and especially after the Luton disappointment to get back and win and get the 3 points. And at the other end, great credit to Ivor Pandur, who was my man of the match. I thought he was fantastic, kept him in.
I saw a couple of videos from the brilliant Tiger Tube Twitter account. There was a Harry Maguire header on there. There was an Ashby header, and those that have got far more knowledge of City headers over the last 100 years, or know more than me. But that I know we get recency bias, but in the context of the game, the season, what it means, where we're at in the season, there can't be many more of that importance and that significance. Kathryn, where were you when that goal went in? What were you doing, and how did you celebrate?
So this game, like I was trying to watch it in a park. It was a friend's. I'd just got back from Bristol for I'd been covering England, Belgium in Bristol on Friday night, and I had a friend's birthday, and she'd sort of friends that don't watch football and they organise their birthdays to clash with football, and you just kind of have to go along with it. So I was in Green Park, and I did scream in Green Park among different Southerners who probably didn't have any clue what was going on. There was actually a Luton fan there, so they'd obviously drawn with Leeds earlier in the day and given me a bit of stick about last week. So it was nice to have something to cheer about right at the end. In terms of the headers, Stuart Elliott against Swansea, Burns, you'll probably remember on a Tuesday night, I think back when Peter Taylor was manager, it put us top of the league of League Two. We went up second, but that's probably my one I would pick in terms of like bet, just because Elliott was so small. And to be fair, Charlie Hughes isn't like the biggest in terms of height. He's maybe not quite as tall as Jones or like John Egan or anything, but the way he kind of like, I saw Baz described it as he'd leapt like a salmon, which I think is how my dad described Stuart Elliott jumping it all those years ago. So maybe some similarities there.
It was just magical, and like everything. There's been so many, and look, it's been a rubbish season. We all know that. We don't need reminding of it. But there have been some spectacular moments within it, and you can still have those moments even when things have been as bad as they have been this season. But that, for me, that was given what happened, particularly against Luton, and the manner of the concession, that own goal, and losing it, and then all the worry and the waiting for Derby's result, and then seeing Derby win, and what that meant for the table, and then just how bad the game was, and particularly how completely hapless. I say hapless is a bit strong, but going forward, City were a complete non-event in that second half, and it felt. I described it in my text commentary as kind of just like a flip-flop game where Wednesday were offered very little, a little bit more going forward than City. It felt like both teams were just playing out for the end of the season to go on holiday, which was inherently frustrating because, yes, for Wednesday, they're not going to challenge the top six, but for City, there's so much on the line. And I'm just watching it going, what the hell are you doing? This is, turgid. But then obviously they pop up with that. And then in front of the away fans, 3,000 away fans, the celebrations at the end so late. And it was just, Kathryn, it's just magical, isn't it? Particularly of all places at Hillsborough, given the rivalry and everything that goes with playing Sheffield Wednesday, especially there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in better times last season, I guess it kind of felt a little bit similar to the Jacob Greaves one at Huddersfield, where it was kind of last minute and it's an unlikely goal scorer, and it's a kind of a fan favourite as well in Charlie Hughes. And fair play to everyone that paid the kind of ridiculous ticket prices to go to Hillsborough and support the team. And as you say, had kind of been subjected to not the best match for 90 minutes, but you're rewarded with a moment like that at the end. And watching kind of the celebrations back, it just looked like pandemonium in that away end. And I guess it kind of sums up, City on the road this season has been so much more enjoyable than it has been watching them at home. And you almost feel happy that the next game's away from home as well. It's almost kind of that psychological of you waiting for the next away game, because they just for whatever reason it is, they just look more comfortable, or at least more solid, and without kind of the pressure on the shoulders when they're playing away from home, as opposed to when they're playing at the MKM.
Burnsy, we were talking about this before we came on, that yes, the performance in an attacking sense was non-existent, and it was as a spectacle, it was horrific. But at this stage of the season, when you've got 5-6 matches to go, and you're in the position that City are, if you play like that, and then you roll up and you score a goal and you win the game away from home 1-0, it doesn't matter. If you October, November, December time, this time next season, and you're putting in week after week turgid performances like that, then there's a conversation. But at this stage of the season, it is all about 3 points, isn't it? Nothing else matters.
Yeah, I accept that, but you want to see him play at a level that you're not going to pull it out the fire in 90 minutes every game, are you? I thought they were all right in the first half as an attacking threat. Kyle Joseph had a couple of efforts on goal. He, to me, looks better playing wide than through the centre. I thought he had a decent performance, a couple of decent efforts on goal. Whether the one set up by Kamara and Pedro, whether he could have hit it a little better. But second half, they never really got a rhythm going, and never really got the passing going. But he made the substitutions, Ruben Sayers, and they paid off. We'll maybe debate later in the 1904 club whether Lincoln has put himself in a place to start at Watford on Tuesday night. I was impressed with him when he came on. Just on the subject of Charlie Hughes, Dimitri sent a question basically saying, is Charlie Hughes in the same class as Maguire and Robertson as a best buy if you wanted to go sort of all nostalgic? I think on the 1904 club earlier in the season, I mentioned that there is a touch of Harry Maguire about him in Charlie Hughes. I don't think he's not at that level, because him and because Maguire and Robertson have turned into exceptional players. And Maguire had something about him as centre half, mainly for me, the ability to come out with the ball, etc., etc. But he might be headed in that direction.
Kathryn, what do you think?
Yeah, I can kind of see the similarities, I think, between the two of them. I think interestingly, when Harry Maguire was first at Hull, he was quite raw, wasn't he? Like, it took him a while to really actually get into the team and to then get settled and kind of put in those performances that obviously ended up getting him the move to Leicester. He actually hadn't started loads of games by the time he ended up leaving. He was kind of in and out of the team. And I think with Charlie, it's kind of his passing ability. You can tell he's good on the ball. He's got an eye for a pass. He's just obviously a case of kind of refining it and add into that kind of quality. And he's confident on the ball. He's confident bringing it out of defence, which is similar to Harry. And he is physical in the air, and maybe not quite got that same presence that Maguire did. But that kind of might come. And he looks like someone, despite being quite young, that he could potentially be a leader, and that's obviously what kind of Maguire became eventually. So I think we all kind of knew when Hughes was signed that there was obviously high hopes that he might, obviously he'd kind of come in as that Jacob Greaves replacement in terms of the profile of the player, and that he's somebody we could develop, and somebody that potentially could go on to bigger and better things at some point. So he's been unlucky with the injuries this season, but I think if he can kind of stay injury free, have a good pre-season, and hopefully, all being well, if it's Championship football next season, we might see him develop even more next year.
And he's only 21 as well. Let's not forget, he's still a really young, for a centre half, he's still very young. And he's got, as you touched on, Burnsy, that Maguire's ability to bring the ball out. And Hughes' kind of first instinct is always to get on the ball and bring it out and try and get. And I think sometimes he gets frustrated because he'll drive out of defence and he'll try and look for a pass, but maybe he hasn't always got an attacking player in an attacking setup or a position to be able to find them quickly. And he wants to move it quickly. And sometimes he's got to take a touch and come back inside or go elsewhere instead of trying to whip it out quickly, particularly out to the flanks.
There's a lot to admire about him. He's going to be exciting to watch over hopefully the next few seasons, see how he develops, because all the building blocks seem to be there in terms of him being a top centre half. And I just admire his appetite for the game and his courage in the game. It was interesting. I don't know whether, I'm going slightly off topic here. I wouldn't have guessed that side on Saturday. I wouldn't necessarily have guessed that Egan would come in for Alfie Jones. And I don't know whether Egan's experience helped Charlie Hughes and will help him develop. Was that harsh on Jones? I don't know whether it was or not.
Well, Kathryn, I'll come to you in a sec. We spoke at Hillsborough, didn't we, before when we got the team news? That element of surprise. I don't think there was any surprise that João Pedro came back into the team. That was a given. I wasn't particularly surprised that Regan came into the team personally to go man for man against Barry Bannon, or certainly try and keep close to Barry Bannon. But yeah, the Egan thing was a surprise in the sense that Alfie's been an ever-present. He's played apart from. He had an injury when Ruben arrived. He missed the game at Coventry through injury, or he was back on the bench. Sorry, at Coventry, his first game back after injury, but didn't get on the pitch. But he's been an ever-present since the game after Coventry, the Swansea game before Christmas. Now, I think Egan coming in, I thought he was excellent. Kathryn, was that a surprise for you to see Jones of the two dropped and Egan brought back in for that game?
It was when I saw the team because I think it's interesting that debate over Alfie Jones this season. Kind of how good has he been? Are we overly can we be overly critical on him because he's been that kind of consistent player? And people read things into Greaves leaving and then the form drop in, and was Greaves kind of helping and bring him up, which I don't kind of buy into. It wasn't his fault for the own goal against Luton. He couldn't exactly do anything. It's had the ball kind of whacked in his face. So it's interesting that, in terms of whether Egan was in there for his physicality, whether it was the fact of the old Sheffield United connection, whether that even played a part in it or not. I'd be interested to see whether he keeps his place for Watford. Whether it was kind of a tactical thing of Egan's is Egan left-footed?
No, right-footed. He played right-sided centre half.
So it's an interesting one. Whether he thinks there's just a better balance between Egan and Hughes. Whether he thinks he brings a bit more strength, sort of in the air. He's maybe a little bit bigger than Alfie Jones. Maybe we've conceded a lot of goals from crosses into the box. I think we've talked about it earlier this season in terms of attacking the ball when it comes into the area, and maybe there was a sort of a feeling that Egan's kind of presence in the penalty area alongside Hughes might work a little bit better than potentially it has done with Alfie Jones. But it's one that I'm intrigued to kind of see what he does with Watford, whether he keeps the same team or whether he changes it again.
Did he say anything? I know it was obviously the euphoria, the win and the Hughes header and everything. Did he say anything after the game about his team selection?
Excuse me, sorry, I'm just choking on air. He did. I asked him why. I asked him what his thought process was with this change, and he said, in terms of Regan, he felt that Regan's dynamism would be what he needed. He felt that he trained. He said to me on Thursday that Regan had been brilliant in training, and he said to me after the game that in the build-up to the game that Regan had been brilliant. In terms of Alfie, he just felt that Egan's experience, a slight change in approach. Egan again had been out of the team for quite a while. He'd not started a game, I think, since the Norwich the draw with Norwich in early February, and I think he just felt that in that game that Egan's experience and his physicality, his height, as you touched on, were all key things that he felt that were going to be crucial. The question I'll flip to you guys is, with Watford on Tuesday night, he obviously made those 3 changes from the side beaten by Luton at Hillsborough. What are you doing tomorrow night? You touched on Lincoln as well, Burns. Are you sticking with, Kathryn, I'll come to you first. Are you sticking with John Egan? Would you make any changes, basically? Let's just keep it simple.
I think you stick with the defence that keeps a clean sheet. I know he has changed it on different times, but I think if you have a back four that doesn't concede a goal, I know you can change it depending on the opposition, but I think I would personally just keep it the same from the weekend. I think there's maybe questions about whether you change your approach, with Watford obviously being a kind of different team to Sheffield Wednesday in terms of how they kind of play. Lincoln's an interesting one. It was a great delivery for the Hughes header that he put in. I think it might be. I think I'd keep Regan Slater in there just because there is energy away from home. I'm imagining another kind of game where we maybe won't have as much of the ball, and it might be a lot of kind of hard work off it, and we're kind of hopeful of maybe nicking a goal sort of vibe. That's kind of what I'm maybe expecting, similar to some of the away games we've seen in the last month or so. So I'd probably keep Regan in there. I mean, you could bring Matt Crooks in. I wonder if Alzate will come back into the starting 11 as well after dropping out at the weekend. It's interesting whether you freshen it up, because you've got the midweek game, and then you've obviously got Swansea on. No, you've got
Coventry.
Coventry and then Swansea. Yeah,
today
Monday and then
this.
Friday. So the games kind of come kind of very thick and fast. So potentially for kind of freshness, he might need to change it up. But I've not really given a full answer. I've just kind of waffled about different players. I don't know. This is why I'm not
to the 1904 club. We're all good at that, Kathryn. It's you're in good company. Tiger Door just on the team.
Ruben, don't change the winning team.
I know. Tiger Door says to the 1904 club on Twitter, I've stopped commenting on team selection, as like many others, I usually end up with egg on my face. Thought Ruben Sayers got it spot on, and the subs really impacted. The back four was solid against a poor team, and Slater covered every blade of grass. Can see Macca being offered a new deal. Thoughts? ? Well, maybe we'll park the Macca new deal, the Sean McLaughlin new deal question in a minute. I don't think he'll change the back four. I'm a big admirer of Alfie Jones, but I go with Kathryn in that. You've kept a clean sheet. You've defended largely well. Pandur, as I say, was my man of the match. I thought he was fantastic. But I would look at the midfield. I was impressed with Lincoln because he played some nice 1-2s. He was a bit quicker. Casey Palmer coming on made a difference as well. Gustavo Puerta didn't have I don't think he had the best game. So I don't know whether Alzate might get in there. You looked at Lincoln coming on. He'll have given that performance. I think he'll have put pressure on Abu Kamara on the right side for his place, perhaps, or maybe in central midfield. I don't think I'd be seeing particularly many changes. But the manager sees him in training. He knows all the stats. He knows what's going on, and he'll have a feel for his players far better than we do. But I do think Lincoln's got a case. There's one I asked you just as we were chatting in the press room before the game. Could you see at any point Crooks and Palmer getting in the same starting lineup, either of you? And as it turned out, neither got in the starting lineup on Saturday. Could you see that with Pedro and Crooks and Palmer?
Go on, Kathryn.
Fascinating, because they're experienced players.
I'm just trying to. It's where you play them, isn't it? Because you'd probably have to drop one of your attacking players, because you'd probably play Crooks or Palmer. I don't think you'd play them both in a midfield three. You'd probably have one of them in the three, maybe with Slater and Alzate, for example. Palmer would probably then play in that sort of forward area behind the striker. But then you probably, that possibly means Gelhardt moving out wide, which we kind of saw against Luton, which I don't think he's as effective out there. I think it's actually quite difficult to fit them into the same team, to be honest. I think it's probably one or the other, because I just don't see them both in that three together, because I do think they are a little bit too much kind of occupying, they're kind of doing the same role a little bit for me. So I would struggle to fit them into the same team, I think.
I like the idea of
neither of them got in Saturday. Sorry, Baz.
Yeah, I can see Alzate coming back in. I didn't think Puerta was much cop on Saturday, if I'm honest. I didn't think he had a great game. But he's still young, and I felt that his red card against Oxford would break his momentum. I asked Ruben about that before the game, and he sort of said, before the Luton game, and he was like, "No, I think he's all right." I didn't think he ever really got to grips with it at Hillsborough. So I can see it going back to being Alzate and Regan. A lot of speculation about Regan, actually, which is quite interesting. Maybe we'll get to that later or next, or maybe on another edition. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I can't help but think what Kathryn said last week was, after the Luton game, was when Casey Palmer was coming off, you wanted Casey Palmer coming on, and I thought again at Hillsborough, Casey was really influential when he came off the bench. He brought some life into that final third. There was one time he got down the right hand side and he fizzed a ball right through the 6-yard box. Nobody there, of course, but what it did do, it raised the spirits of the away supporters, and it gave Wednesday something to think about. That, in fairness, Carl Joseph and Kamara up to that point hadn't done. Kamara was a complete non-entity in the game. I thought Carl Joseph, as he always does, he runs a lot. Didn't really achieve anything. He should have scored in the first half. He has to blast that in the back of the net. Perhaps that's a consequence of Carl not scoring yet. That he kind of snatched at it. Yes, Pierce Charles made a decent save, as Roy Keane would say, that's his job. It was a fairly mundane save for Charles, but maybe you could see a situation on tomorrow night where he seems to like Joseph, so maybe he takes Kamara out and goes Lincoln, or does he put Gelhardt back to the left and put Kamara in the 8-10, or does he bring Crooks back in because he's not really featured? I mean, Matt Crooks came on 90th minute or whatever it was, barely touched the ball. So he has got options. He's got options. I think he's got to try and get something in midfield that gives them a bit more control than we saw at Hillsborough, because they did allow Bannon and whatnot to start dominating that ball in the second half and start picking passes. And there were a couple of times they got cut open. They needed the goalkeeper to make a couple of good saves. Gassama, I still think they struggle against pacey wingers. That's clearly something they've got to remedy in the summer. There was a couple of times, Wednesday offered nothing in the first half for half an hour, completely not. They weren't in the game, and then two balls from down the right side got Gassama past McLaughlin. There was a time as well when he switched left and he got past Coyle. So they've got to. That is the worry when they get up. They're up against speedy wingers who go at Coyle and McLaughlin for pace and do them. I don't know. I do think he'll change it, because I think the performance defensively, for the most part, was okay. Going forward was a complete non-event, and I think he'll try and get more intensity and dynamism in that front 3-4, because they had none, absolutely none at Hillsborough, and they've won the game because of a wonderful set play. Lincoln's free kick was great, but the goal's made by the header. The header is sensational. Within the game elsewhere, they've created absolutely nothing. So I think he'll want to try and remedy that at Watford.
I slightly disagree. I don't think they created anything in the second half, really. There was maybe an opportunity on that diving header for João Pedro, but he just didn't get his angles right. But I thought in the first half, as I said earlier, Carl Joseph, he had the shot. See what you're saying about maybe he should have scored it. For me, he got it on target. He had another shot that a defender sort of flicked away with his head. So there was a bit more. I think I could see a couple of changes in midfield tomorrow, but I don't know. I wouldn't have guessed the team on Saturday. Just on the subject of, you were mentioning Regan Slater, what's the speculation? He's been linked with some other clubs, isn't he? What's going on?
Yeah, there is interest there. Definite interest. It's so Stoke are one of them, Derby are another. I saw links to Sheffield United, but I can't see that at this stage. But the Derby thing is interesting, and definitely Stoke, because there were 2 or 3 players at the back end of the transfer window in the summer that were how do I phrase this? There was interest because obviously it's no secret that it wasn't a happy camp under Tim Volter, and I think there were 1 or 2 players that had been approached about potential moves out of the club in the final days of the window, and Stoke were sniffing around. Now it's not a massive surprise because Lee Darnborough at that time was at Stoke City. He'd left Hull City, he'd gone to Stoke, and obviously Lee was instrumental in bringing Regan to Hull City in that situation anyway, back in League One when they got him on loan, of course, then signed him for 50 grand as the song goes. So yeah, Stoke are sniffing around, and it's a case of we'll have to wait and see, I think, because Regan's still under contract for another couple of years. Does he fancy, does Regan fancy a change? Does he fancy a change of scenery and go and play somewhere else? He's been at City a little while now. Does he see his future here long term under Ruben? Obviously, he's played a lot under Ruben, but he's been in and out of the team. It's been Steven Alzate, it's been Gustavo Puerta. So what does the player, what does Regan want? I think he's done enough for Hull City to have earned the right to say, I fancy a change of scenery. Maybe he doesn't, but there is definitely interest in him, and there's definitely going to be a discussion to be had in the summer, and City are aware of that interest, so it's not a surprise. So it's one to watch, and see where it plays out in the coming months.
Just on the other one raised by Tiger Door says, can see Maka being offered a new deal. Thoughts? Is he out of contract? He's not out of contract, is he?
No, they've only got. This is for me, and we've talked about this before. This is why, for me, it's a positive if they can stay up, because they're not going to have the level of churn that we saw last season. Yes, there's a few loan players that will go back, but not to the same. The players that they're going to lose on loan are nowhere near the impact that we had with Carvalho, with Liam Delap, etc., etc. So I think there's only 5 players out of contract, of which the headline is João Pedro, but they do have the option on him. So he signed a 2-year. He signed a 1-year deal with a 1-year option, so they could have activate that. The other players, you like Brandon Fleming, well, he's at Forest Green. He's not going to be offered a new deal. You've got Doken Sinek, not going to be offered a new deal. So I think there's not the massive change and churn this summer that we saw last summer. Hopefully everything stays calm in the management office, and then if that all stays relatively calm, they've got the opportunity, if they stay in the Championship, to have a decent summer. But yeah, McLaughlin's under contract, so I mean, potentially it could be a player they look at. I'd be surprised in the summer if they look at offering him a new deal, but I think their focus in the summer will be down to getting players in that are capable of making them better and ensuring they don't repeat what they've done this year.
Would you take up the option on João Pedro for next season?
I think so, yeah. I know he's not scored a ridiculous amount of goals, but I just think he is. You can tell his experience, even if I think they would need to bring another striker in as well. But I think he's somebody that could help someone like Kyle Joseph. I know we kind of said that in January, but with his experience, you could tell, like, back in the day before he got a bit older, he was clearly, like, he still is a very good player. He's got that kind of intelligence, that football intelligence, with some of his movement. He's obviously maybe not quite as fit or quite as quick as he maybe once was in the past, but he's definitely still got a lot to offer, I think, at a Championship level. So I would definitely take the option on him.
I'd agree.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. I think if they stay up, I think it's a no-brainer. Look, if Hull City start the first game of next season with João Pedro as their lead striker, I'd be very, very worried. And that's no slight on João Pedro himself, because I think at 33, he's got something to offer. But the club have failed massively in the last couple of windows to sign a striker of a genuine striker. You see players like Sunderland go out and sign Wilson Isidore. you saw Borough go and sign Emmanuel Lati-Lath. Obviously, they've now signed Tommy Conway. There's so many examples of other clubs in the Championship that are going out and signing strikers that can score goals. City don't do that. They haven't been able to. Without wishing to labour the point and go over old ground, one of the key reasons they didn't get in the playoffs last year was because they didn't replace Liam Delap. They didn't sign a top striker this summer, and that's why up until the weekend they were only outside the bubble. Derby went above them on goals scored. They barely scored a goal a game. They could feasibly still get relegated because they've not scored enough goals. Derby, if it became between them and Derby and they were level on points and goal difference, it would be goals scored. So that is something they've got to remedy in the summer. They have to go out and sign one, possibly two strikers. Yes, I know they've spent £2.5 million on Carl Joseph, and ultimately he's got to start chipping in with some goals because it's 12 or 13 games now and he hasn't scored a goal. And yeah, he works hard. Yeah, he's a great lad and all those sorts of things. But ultimately, he's a striker. He's an attacking player that is yet to score a goal. And they've got so many good players in their team, but so many of them don't score goals. And chipping in with a goal here and a goal there is not good enough. It's not going to turn you into a team that are capable of challenging for the playoffs. Football's never changed. Football's dead simple. The teams that score the most goals and concede the fewest are the ones that challenge at the top. The teams that don't score and concede are the ones that are at the bottom. City don't score goals. I haven't scored enough goals. So, Pedro, yes, I would keep him, coming back to your question, Burnsy, but it can't. They have to go out and sign a striker that's capable of getting them 15 to 20 goals. And then you require the other players around them to chip in with 5 and 10 and 12 here and there if they are going to challenge. But Pedro, for me, good player to have around, good experienced, will chip in with 4 or 5 goals, but he cannot be the leading striker next season. Because if they get to the end of the summer window and he's your leading striker, that's a disgrace.
Well, we shall see what happens. I'm sure there is a list of all sorts of players for the club. Jason Statham, not that one, to the 1904 club. It's not that one. I'm having a look. I would take those kind of performances and results every week, but I get the feeling it's going to come down to Pompey on the last game. There's a lot of grumble amongst the City fans about the kick-off times this season. I'd like to know the thoughts of you guys. Well, kick-off times are it is what it is because of the broadcasters, really, and the clubs are taking the enhanced money, so it can be inconvenient for the fans. But it's just what it is for me. I hope it's not coming down to the last game at Pompey. That would be well, it might, but I hope not.
You make it.
Kathryn?
Look, you make it.
Oh, sorry, Baz.
Just on that. Before Kathryn comes in on Pompey, you make a deal with the devil when you sign up to when you're so reliant on TV money as the clubs. These clubs aren't sustainable. They're not self-sufficient. Hull City are not self-sufficient. Hull City rely, yes, sponsorship and ticket revenue. I mean, their tickets are dirt cheap, so I'd question how crucial that ticket revenue is anyway. But they're reliant on their owner funding £500,000 a week. Without that and the TV money, we haven't got a game. And yes, it's frustrating. Yes, it's annoying, and the kickoff times are difficult, and 12:30s here, and 8 o'clock against Coventry, and blah 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 blah. But ultimately, when you say to Sky Sports, we want, we'll sign a deal X amount of £1 million, they are going to say, right, we're going to move fixtures here and fixtures there. That is just, I know fans get treated badly and they get thrust to the back of the queue when everything's handed out, and it is sad. But unfortunately, that's the modern game. And when you are so reliant as a football club and an industry on gate receipts, on broadcast revenue, you just have to accept the fact that there are going to be kickoff changes, and it is, like I say, it is annoying, and it does cost fans extra money with extra time off work and ridiculous train prices and potentially hotels. But as I say, you make the deal with the devil. You take the broadcast money. clubs have got no power. They just have to go, yeah, okay, Sky Sports, you move us. And look, the final day fixtures have always been, as long as I can remember, have always been 12:30 on the final day. So that's never changed. That's never, we knew at the start of the season that the final day would be May the 3rd at 12:30. And that is just the way it goes. Kathryn on Pompey. Sorry, I did interrupt. I apologise.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't go down to the last day either. I'm not sure my nerves can take it. I mean, we've had 2 seasons in a row. It's been a bit of a trek on the last day. It was Plymouth last year, wasn't it? I obviously not as bad if you live down south like I do, but yeah, I made the trip to Plymouth last season and regretted it after watching that. I'm hoping to make the trip to Portsmouth. I've not been to Portsmouth before, but yeah, it's always the fans that suffer, isn't it? I think that's kind of unfortunately the way it is. One thing I did pick up on is we kind of spoke about how bad how much the tickets cost for Sheffield Wednesday, which is obviously a lot easier to get to. Ticket prices for Swansea away are very, very reasonable, which is good. I'll be making the trip over to South Wales for that one as well. So yeah, no one wants it going down to that Portsmouth game. I do think that game against Derby could be key, whether it's a situation of if we win that, we end up being safe, whether it's another team that's in and around it, whether we might need a point that day. I don't know. I go from thinking different things each week. After Luton last week, I was thinking we're not going to be all right. Then you beat Sheffield Wednesday, think we're going to be all right. We're not going to be all right. We're going to be all right. It flips and changes each week. I think we're not going to know until we know.
Yeah, just on that.
They need 2 wins now, Kathryn?
Yeah,
2 wins or 3?
Wins, yeah. That's.
I don't know whether it's creeping up.
2 wins and a couple of draws, maybe.
Okay.
Just on that, a great point, Kathryn, about Swansea. Fair credit. I think adult tickets at Swansea are $14.50 on Good Friday. So we hammered QPR earlier in the season. Their tickets are a disgrace. There are a lot of clubs that are charging obscene amounts of money. Sheffield Wednesday being another one for an absolute dump of a stadium. But yeah, I mean, credit, $14.50 for adult tickets. I know it's a long way. It's Good Friday, but hopefully, I know Derby had a couple of thousand go down there for their defeat on Saturday. So hopefully, City get a good backing because that's another massive game. But just on that point about points and things, I was looking at the latest Opta stuff today, and Opta they simulate the table and stuff based on results, many different things. Kind of a bit like the supercomputer, but I think Opta's a bit more. They use kind of more favourable stuff, and it's got City finishing 18th, but on 52 points, and it's got Plymouth going down. I think we'd expect them to go down anyway. It's then got Luton and Cardiff going down. Luton on 46 points, Cardiff on 47, and it's got Derby on 47, finishing just outside, but them two really close. And then, as I say, City up on 52. So, judging by what they're saying, they're fairly confident that City. It seems to be between kind of Luton, Cardiff, and Derby that all the stuff you see, whether it's from bookmakers, Opta, or anybody else that wants to have a go at the predicting the outcome, it does seem 2 from those 3. But in reality, I don't think it's going to be quite that straightforward. But yeah, we've said 3 wins, haven't we, Burnsy, for weeks? They've got one of them. If they can get 2 more, if they get one at Watford, they're almost home and hose. I think if they win at Watford, depending on what other teams do, then they're pretty much home and hose. That puts them on 47. We think 50 is the magic number. They've still got for me, they've got very favourable fixtures coming up. I think the Coventry game is inherently winnable on Monday. Then you've got Swansea away, you've got Preston at home, winnable, and that's before you get to that final 2. I don't want to jump ahead of myself because for obvious reasons, but they've got everything in their favour now, and they need to go to Watford and finally bury the hatchet and get a second win on the spin.
Yeah, you could see them doing it at Watford, I think, but I don't know. It's been so topsy-turvy, and all season, and recently you look at Oxford beating Sheffield United at the weekend. I just think it's really hard to predict in this division. Joe Moore to the 1904 Club on Twitter says the away games for the last 2 seasons have been exceptional, some live memories. Apart from the result, and currently it is all about results, the football was dire, says Joe. Nigel says, to the 1904 club, the subs made the impact. Alzati gave more control to the midfield, and Palmer and Lincoln brought some added creativity. Thought also Egan had a very good game and looked a good partner for Hughes. And Ryan Rudd says, I think Saturday, like all seasons, showcased how great Pandur has been all season. Player of the season so far for me, says Ryan Rudd. I would agree with you, he's mine as well. Would love to hear your thoughts on Pandur this year, especially when Rosie preferred Allsop to him last season. Well, I think if you dug in the archives of the 1904 club at some point early in the season, I was saying I'd get Carl Darlow on the phone now. I'm prepared to hold my hands up and say he's been magnificent. Great credit to him. He was magnificent again on Saturday. And if it hadn't been for him, they might not have got the win. So, yeah, he's been excellent. Definitely my player of the season.
Kathryn, Ivor Pandur.
Yeah, I think, again, like Burnsy said, I mean, there was that period where Rushworth had kind of maybe ousted him from the team for a couple of games, and we thought maybe Rushworth was going to be the number one. And obviously, Pandur had made that mistake against Leeds where he sort of passed the ball straight to forward and conceded, and I think he was maybe at fault for the second goal as well. And I was kind of maybe a little bit of the opinion of, well, we'll give Rushworth a go, and then obviously he gets recalled, Pandur comes back in. And to be fair to him, since then, I don't think he's made a mistake since he's come back into the team, and he looks, reliable. I think he's got over that little. You always expect a goalkeeper to make a couple of mistakes in a season, or like one or two. It's like part of the position that they play. But I think he's been pretty consistent from start to finish, and he just looks like he commands his area pretty well. I think he's got a good relationship with his defenders. Very, very good shot stopper, not to go back to kind of the Roy Keane comment of you expect a goalkeeper to be a good shot stopper, but he's very kind of reactive to, the save on the weekend that we saw. He gets down well and he just reacts very well, I think. And I mean, I think a lot of people were of the opinion that maybe he should have got more of a look in last season, but it's nice to see him kind of be consistent this year.
This is a casual observation, but is there a bit less penalty box prattling around now under Ruben Sayers? So there is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think he's done really well. I think there's Kathryn said there's been moments, but give me a goalkeeper that doesn't go through a 46-game season that makes errors. Just look down the road at Ellen Road and the problems there they've got with Meslier. And Carl Darlow was brought back in for that game at Luton at the weekend. I still think he's got a lot of improving to do, but I spoke to Charlie Hughes about him on Saturday, and he said, like, I love him. He gives me so much confidence. I'm so confident with him behind me. And they have built up a relationship. And I think, look, we shouldn't forget, Pandur's still a young goalkeeper. It's his first full season in English football and in the Championship, which is cut and thrust and very physical. So I think for the most part, he's done really well. And those two saves, he made 3 big saves actually on Saturday, but the one early in the second half to deny Windass when they were cut open down Lewis' side, that one where he sort of came out and spread himself and he blocked it there. Then it was the one-on-one as the game started to get a bit stretched late on. There was the one-on-one. Again, he's diving away. It's a save I would expect him to make, but he did. That was and then obviously after Hughesy had scored what proved to be the winner, Dominic Iorfa had the one at the back post where he sort of dived away to his left. And again, they're all saves that you would expect a very good goalkeeper at this level to make, but that doesn't mean they always do. So I think you have to be fair to Ivor and say he's grown into the season. He's overcome the odd hurdle, obviously the disappointment with Carl Rushworth, and then of losing his place, and then looking like he's going to be out of the team for a prolonged period of time, and then coming back in and he was brilliant at Sheffield United as an example straight after Carl had gone back. So I think he's been great. And when you're looking at player of the season, I don't think there's going to be too many candidates. In fairness, if we're brutally honest, I don't think there's too many players you have on your list and go, yeah, player of the season, there's 4 or 5. I don't think that. So I think it's almost, and there might be 1 or 2. We'll have a conversation about that in a couple of weeks. But yeah, I think he's been good, I think he was really important on Saturday, wasn't he? I just want to go back to that goal as well. Go on, Burnsy.
Do you?
Yeah, quick. Yeah, just quick one. Go on. Go ahead.
they'd have lost the game without him, I think. Just before you go back to that goal, Coxey says, when was the last time you saw a season like this where all the bottom teams are picking up points consistently and no one getting cut adrift? Does make for exciting football, but no good for the nerves.
Well, I think it's the Championship. I just think it's much more even than we've seen perhaps in previous times. You know, the fact that Oxford can go beat Sheffield United and Luton can. I mean, look, Luton obviously were in the top flight last year. They were starting to get some form. That was always going to be a difficult game for Leeds. I don't think there's that much in the Championship. Genuinely, from Plymouth are clearly the poorest team in the league, but everybody else are much of a muchness, and it's just about getting that momentum. You know, a bit of luck with decisions here and there. Injuries obviously play a key factor, and it comes down to your strikers. It comes down to having good players up front, and City haven't had that this season. You know, defensively they're not. There's teams further up the league that have conceded more goals than City have, but the trouble is, has been creating chances and scoring goals. That is why they are where they are. You look at their game. So many of them are 1-0 here and 2-1 there. How many times have they been battered this season? The only time I can think of off the top of my head was away at Norwich before the international break, and that, funnily enough, came on the back of 3 straight wins. They've not been pummeled. In terms of goals against in games, they just haven't got the quality in the final third. They just haven't had it, and that is why they are where they are.
Watford are one of those teams that have conceded more goals than City ahead of Tuesday.
Absolutely. On them, they've their home form is. I think they've claimed 11 wins at home from 19, so they've got one of the best home records in the league. But what did we say, Burnsy? 1 win in 6 for them. So they're not in great form, are they? They're now 7 points off the top 6, effectively 8, because their goal difference is so much worse. Their season's finished, would you say now?
Well, their big game was Bristol City on Saturday, wasn't it? And it was. You know, you win that, then you're thinking, oh, Watford are going to maybe come with a late run. They might still do it, but Bristol City have gone top 6, which I actually like. I think that's, I like that. I think it's good for the division to see somebody else up there, and I'm pleased about that. Watford, I think perhaps their opportunity is gone. They would have to. They'll still be thinking it mathematically. They've still got a chance at 7 points off, but yeah, we shall wait and see. Just on the subject of Watford tomorrow night. Lee Walker says to the 1904 Club, the subs made an impact. A start for Lincoln on Tuesday night instead of Kamara. Well, we discussed that earlier, Lee, but I think that is a definite live question for me. I could see that. Sorry, I've wandered off there, and I can't remember where we were, other than we were discussing Watford.
On the subject of Watford, I was going
to wait. I was going to make one other point. I was just you were sort of writing Plymouth off. I don't think I'd write Plymouth off. They picked up 2 wins and a draw in the last 4 games. They know
5-0.
What?
Then they'll get beat 5-0.
I know, but they got out on the last day, didn't they? Last season, and I wouldn't write them off yet. I don't think you can write anybody. I don't think you can say with any certainty that's going to happen in this division. They're going to get out.
She makes a fair point.
I don't think you can at this point.
On the subject of Watford, Kathryn, and I know we've talked about this long and so many times over the last few weeks about City's inability to win back-to-back games in the Championship. Yeah, if there was a game you could pick to go and do it on the back of what they would have got from the winner at Hillsborough, to go to Watford, always a nice stadium, lovely playing surface. Watford now mid-table, kind of a couple of big injuries they've also got now. They were beaten at Bristol City. They've got to grasp this, surely. If they're never going to get a better chance under Ruben this season to win 2 games in a row, are they?
Yeah, and I think if we go back to Ruben's first game was Watford, wasn't it, at home? And I thought they were really poor that night. I just think they're a pretty hit and miss team, like a lot of Championship teams. I know the home record's been pretty good, but I think when I was looking, it was 2 wins at home since January, I think. So first half of the season probably better than the second, and they've kind of dropped off. I mean, they were beat by Oxford. I know that was away from home, but they've I think the only teams they beat at home was Luton and it was another team battling relegation. So maybe it's not the best start to pick out, but they've not been consistent, and it just sort of feels like, them losing at the weekend. Look, it's still going to be a tricky-ish game. They are, above us in the table for a reason. It's one of those where I think it feels like it's an opportunity to go and get a win. I mean, I don't think you'd turn your nose up at a point, because you take all the points you can get at this time in the season. But it does kind of feel like if you can put in that next to Coventry, of the 2 games, that looks like a better chance to get 3 points, especially with our home record. You're looking at Watford as the better opportunity to get a win. And it would just do so much to follow up, the win at Sheffield Wednesday with another win. You never know where that might take you, because looking at some of the games, Tuesday, I think Stoke play Luton, and I think QPR play, is it QPR Oxford on Wednesday or something? Yeah, Oxford QPR. So we're only 2 points behind QPR. I mean, if QPR will get beat by Oxford and we win, we go above them. Or vice versa, if Oxford drop points, you go above Oxford. So there's some interesting games down the bottom that teams kind of playing each other. Swansea playing Plymouth. So again, that's a big game for kind of both those 2 teams. So getting a win, on Tuesday could be so crucial.
And Derby
bang on about QPR. You bang on about QPR. I was listening to a QPR fan ahead of the weekend, and they're really concerned, their supporters. They've got lots of injuries, and they're almost in free fall. They haven't won in 6, and they're immensely worried there that they might go a slide. And what have they got? 45 points, 46 points, something like that at the moment.
46 above us, so yeah, 46.
Yeah, 46. It's not enough yet.
Well,
Is
got
it?
5 points.
A couple of.
But just before you go any further, you've got Plymouth bottom on 37, then you've got Luton 23rd on 39, Cardiff 22nd, so third bottom on 41. Then Derby outside the bottom 3 on goal difference 41, Stoke 43, City 44, Oxford 45, Portsmouth 45, QPR 46, and then Swansea probably now on 48 with Preston out of it after beating Derby. But goal difference is massive. City's goal difference is better than Cardiff, Luton and Plymouth by some distance. And obviously Derby play Burnley tomorrow night as well. There's another big round of games. I think we'd have all taken 4 points. If you'd have offered us 4 points before Hillsborough, I think most people on the back of Luton probably would have taken it. I guess 4 points would still represent a decent return from back-to-back away games. And then you're looking at what that does in terms of other results. If everybody else loses and you've won tomorrow night, pending Wednesday results, you're a point further clear. You go 4 points clear with better goal difference, so 5. But I just think tomorrow is such an opportunity now to go and win that game. You were going to say, Burnsy, sorry.
I was just going to introduce another topic, sort of, really. We're going to turn into a campaign for Real Ale podcast if we're not careful. But Neil Williamson sends us a little message on the 1904 Club to say, is the Sheffield Tap the best train station pub in the UK? And on the football, he says, Alzati and Lincoln changed the game, looked after it. All I would like to say on that, Neil, is I'd love to see a tap in the old ticket office in Hull Station, in Paragon Station, would make a big difference to that station. But people have talked about it, but it doesn't seem to be happening. And I agree on Alzati and Lincoln.
Maybe the York tap's got a claim in there.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's decent. Yeah. But anyway.
Just some
championship. That's it from the Camera podcast for today. Back to the 1904 Club.
Some championship news before we go. Ivan Juric, not surprisingly, sacked by Southampton after their 3-1 defeat at Spurs. They're the first team relegated after 31 games since the Premier League came into being in 92. Their biggest target, which I thought was interesting before the trip to Tottenham, he said, Juric, that their biggest target was to avoid being the worst team in history, which of course Derby have that honour, and on 11 points are still a couple of points above Southampton. But interestingly, the two names in the frame, and have been for quite a while, in fairness, even before he was sacked, were Danny Roll, who I felt when I was in the press room with him on Saturday afternoon, it was almost like a resignation speech, basically saying players been great since I've been here, but I've had enough, essentially, was what he said. And Liam Rossini, who have won his 5th game in a row for Strasbourg on Sunday at Reims, and I think they're only a point or two outside the Champions League spaces in 4th. Not sure why Liam would give up Strasbourg and potential Champions League football for the Championship and Southampton. Burnsy?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm really pleased for him that
absolutely.
It's going well there. But when you put it like that, you'd think, well, if they get to the Champions League, you stay in it and test yourself as a coach. He's tested himself in the Championship. It'd be an interesting one. His name's got to be in the frame and will be for other jobs. But if he can get them to Champions League, you take that, don't you? As a career option and as a challenge to you. I think he's gone there for a challenge and to do something different. Kathryn?
Yeah, Kathryn, and given they're owned by Chelsea, Strasbourg, Maresca isn't going to be there for a huge amount of time because it's Chelsea. Maybe he's got one eye on that job potentially. And if he thinks that if I can take Strasbourg with a really young side, yes, they've got some good players, of course, but he's still got to do it. If he can take that team into the Champions League, even the Europa League, in his first year, and have a good season next season, maybe he's thinking, hang on a minute, if I stick around here and stay within this group of clubs, that Chelsea job might not be too far down the line.
I'd be surprised if Liam left Strasbourg to go to Southampton. I think Danny Roll needs or would want that job more than Liam would. I think Danny Roll's probably not, how do I say, begging for a club to come and get him, but he's clearly a very, very good manager and has had to work under extremely difficult circumstances at Sheffield Wednesday. Has probably taken them as far as he can, and probably deserves a chance to go and manage another team and have a chance of competing for promotion. I mean, I know as much as Southampton have been kind of abysmal this season, we all know the parachute payments that whoever comes down is always usually in a decent position. I know Luton are the exception kind of this season to have another go. And to be fair, I'm not really sure what went on at Luton, whether it was just a case of that squad just massively overachieved by getting there and then actually kind of having a half go in the Premier League and now maybe has been impacted more by relegation, and the likes of Burnley and Sheffield United, they're kind of the example of teams that come down and then are very well placed to go and compete again. But on Liam, I think, as Burnsy was kind of saying, if he gets them into the Champions League or even the Europa League, I think it doesn't kind of matter which competition. Obviously, Champions League would be fantastic, but even if he gets them into the Europa League, I think he stays and he sees that through. And that's probably a better position to kind of be in and have a couple of years somewhere rather than having 1 year and then coming back to kind of build a bit of a project, build up his reputation a little bit more, and then he'd be better placed to get a job in the Premier League. And I think we've heard him say as well, he felt like he was ready for a job in the Premier League. I don't know if he'd see the Championship as a step down, to be honest, kind of from where he's at. I think we'd only see him leave for a job in the top flight. So I'd be very surprised to see him leave Strasbourg for Southampton.
Absolutely. Right. Well, we'll leave it there for today. Just final thoughts, Burnsy, before we head off on Watford. Big opportunity. Go on. What's your prediction?
Well, yeah, I definitely the form and that result at Wednesday, not the performance, but the result away from home. They've every chance, and I do wonder whether Watford's season has gone. So I think there'll be a couple of changes. We'll wait and see what happens.
Kathryn?
Again, I agree. I think it's a big chance to go and get a win after Saturday's result, and hopefully they go and do it. I think, like I said earlier, of the two games coming up, Watford and Coventry, Watford's the one that looks more winnable, and it just makes us feel a little bit more comfortable. I'm not sure when we'll get to that point where we actually feel. I don't think we will until it's confirmed that they're safe or anything like that. I don't think we'll ever stop looking over our shoulders until it's done. So. But it would make us feel a little bit more comfortable if they get a win on Tuesday.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Kathryn, as always, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll be trying to keep across the game from Belgium as England play there tomorrow. So Going to be very stressed.
Safe travels over there. And Burnsy, I'll see you tomorrow night down at Vicarage Road. Thanks for joining us. And thanks to everybody, as always, for watching, for sending messages. If you are travelling to Vicarage Road tomorrow night, long way down there, of course, on a Tuesday, have a safe journey. And hopefully City reward you again like they did on Saturday. What a moment that was.